You've probably seen the picture. It's one of those images that sticks in your mind, popping up on your phone screen years after you first saw it. A man alone on a park bench. He's wearing a simple suit, looking down at a half-eaten sandwich from a paper bag. There's a deep, quiet sadness in his slumped posture, a world of unspoken weight on his shoulders. That man is Keanu Reeves. The internet called it Sad Keanu, and for a while it was a meme, a joke. But the reason it went so viral, the reason it resonated with millions of people, is because it didn't feel like a joke. It felt real. It felt like a moment of genuine, unguarded human emotion, captured by a stranger's lens. In a world of carefully curated social media posts and perfect celebrity smiles, this raw, quiet moment of sorrow felt strangely relatable. But here's the thing about Keanu Reeves. For every image of him looking lonely, there are a dozen stories, a dozen viral videos that paint a completely different picture. There's the one of him, a global superstar worth millions, sitting on a crowded New York City subway, calmly reading a book. When he noticed there were no empty seats, he didn't call an assistant or complain. He simply stood up and gave his seat to a woman standing nearby, then held onto the handrail for the rest of the ride, just like any other regular person. No fuss, no fanfare. He just did it because it was the right thing to do. Then there's the famous video from a few years ago. A group of people were waiting outside a building, and they realized Keanu Reeves was among them, just patiently waiting for the doors to open. Someone was filming a birthday video for their friend, and he casually leaned in, smiled, and wished the person a happy birthday. He wasn't trying to get attention. He was just there. A person existing in the same space as everyone else, sharing a small moment of kindness. When the party he was supposed to be at hadn't started yet, he didn't demand to be let in. He just chatted with the people on the street, completely at ease. These aren't isolated incidents. They are pieces of a much larger puzzle. Stories circulate from film sets where he would take pay cuts so that other actors, people he respected and wanted to work with, could be hired. He famously bought every single member of the stunt crew on The Matrix a brand new Harley-Davidson motorcycle to thank them for their hard work. He's the one who will stop his car to help someone who's broken down. He's the one who treats photographers and paparazzi not with annoyance, but with a kind of gentle, curious respect, often asking them how they're doing before posing for a picture. And when he takes photos with fans, especially women, he has this signature move. He never quite touches them. His hands hover respectfully near their backs or shoulders. It's a small, almost unnoticeable gesture, but it speaks volumes. It says, "I see you. I respect your space. I am here with you, but I will not impose." In an industry often plagued by stories of ego and misconduct, this simple act of decency is revolutionary. So you have this strange, beautiful contradiction. You have the man on the park bench, carrying a sorrow so heavy it's almost visible. And you have the man on the subway, the man on the street, the man on the movie set, who moves through the world with a grace and kindness that seem almost out of place. It makes you wonder, where does this come from? Most people who achieve his level of fame and wealth build walls around themselves. They develop an aura, a sense of being different, of being above it all. Not him. He seems to move through the world with a lightness, as if the fame doesn't stick to him at all, and yet the sadness is still there, peeking through the cracks. It's in his eyes in interviews when he talks about something profound. It's in the quiet, thoughtful way he answers questions, never giving a canned, PR-approved response. He seems to carry a depth, an understanding of life's darker corners, that most people, let alone celebrities, rarely show so openly. This isn't the sadness of someone who is having a bad day. This is the sadness of someone who has been through the fire. Someone who has looked into the abyss and has somehow found a way to keep walking forward. It's easy to see his kindness and just think, oh, he's a nice guy. But it's more than that. It's too deliberate, too consistent. It feels like a choice. A deeply personal philosophy that he lives by every single day. It's as if he has learned a secret about life, a lesson that was taught to him in the hardest way possible, and now he spends his life living out that lesson. The kindness isn't a performance. It's a result. It's the fruit of a tree that has grown in soil that has seen terrible storms. The world loves a good rags to riches story, a tale of triumph and success. But Keanu's story isn't about the triumph of fame or wealth. Those things just happened along the way. His real story is about something much deeper. It's about how a person can face unimaginable loss, not once, but over and over again. And instead of letting it harden them into a bitter, cynical person, they allow it to soften them. They allow it to open their heart to the pain of others, to see the shared struggle in every person they meet. The quiet icon we see on the screen and in viral videos is not the whole story. He is merely the survivor, the gentle soul standing on the other side of a life filled with tragedy. To truly understand him, to understand the lesson he shares, you have to go back. You have to look at the cracks in the foundation and see what caused them. You have to understand the 3 tragedies that shaped everything. To understand the man on the subway, the one who gives up his seat without a second thought, you first have to understand the boy who lost his brother. Not a brother by blood, but a brother of the soul, the kind of connection that feels like it was forged in another lifetime. This was the first major crack in the foundation, the one that taught him the world could shift on its axis in a single horrifying moment. Before the fame, before the iconic roles, there was just a young actor finding his way in the strange, glittering world of Hollywood. And then he met another young actor, and everything changed. Their meeting wasn't some grand cinematic event. It was on the set of a movie, a place where friendships are often as temporary as the film crews themselves. But this was different. They were 2 kindred spirits who recognized something in each other almost immediately. One was a whirlwind of raw, untamed talent, a poet and a musician with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the world. The other was a quiet observer, thoughtful and intense, with a gentle spirit and a goofy laugh that could break through any tension. They were drawn together by a shared desire to be something more than just movie stars. They wanted to be authentic. They wanted to create things that mattered. Their bond grew quickly, far beyond the confines of a film set. They became inseparable. They would spend hours talking late into the night, not about Hollywood gossip or upcoming roles, but about life, about philosophy, about the universe. They shared scripts they had written, songs they had composed, and dreams they were afraid to tell anyone else. For a young man trying to navigate the often superficial world of fame, this friendship was an anchor. It was a safe harbor where he could be completely himself without judgment or pretense. His friend was his confidant, his moral compass, the one person who truly understood the person he was trying to become. They weren't just friends. They were family. They were 2 halves of a whole, navigating the crazy journey of life together. As the years went by, their careers began to soar, but on slightly different trajectories. His friend was hailed as a generational talent, a brilliant actor destined for greatness, a true artist who poured every ounce of his being into his performances. He was the golden boy, the one everyone expected to win all the awards. Meanwhile, Keanu was finding his own path, becoming the action hero, the cool guy with the heart of gold. They were both successful, both living the dream, but they always made time for each other. No matter how busy they were, they would find a way to connect, to check in, to remind each other of who they were before the world told them who they should be. Their friendship was a constant, a north star in the chaotic sky of their lives. And then, one ordinary night, everything shattered. The phone call came. The kind of phone call that you never forget, the one that splits your life into a before and an after. The news was impossible, a nightmare made real. His friend, his brother, his anchor was gone. Just like that. The world, which had seemed so full of promise just hours before, suddenly felt cold, empty, and cruel. The details of how it happened became a public spectacle, a feeding frenzy for the media. But for him, it wasn't a headline. It was a personal apocalypse. It was the sound of a door slamming shut forever. The silence where a beloved voice used to be. In the days and weeks that followed, he moved through the world like a ghost. He was surrounded by people, by crews and coworkers, but he had never felt more alone. He was in the middle of filming a movie that would eventually change his life and turn him into a global superstar. A film called The Matrix. But how do you pretend to be a savior of humanity when you feel like you've lost your own? How do you perform gravity-defying stunts in front of a green screen when your heart is so heavy with grief that it feels like it might drag you down to the center of the earth? The absurdity of it all must have been overwhelming. He didn't make a scene. He didn't talk about it in interviews. He just endured. He went to work, he said his lines, he did his job, and he carried his pain quietly, hidden behind a mask of professionalism. This first tragedy was a brutal, unforgiving teacher. It taught him a lesson that no book or guru could ever impart, that life is terrifyingly fragile. It taught him that tomorrow is not guaranteed, that the people you love can be taken away in the blink of an eye. It was a profound and painful awakening. The sadness that people sometimes saw in his eyes, the quiet melancholy that seemed to follow him even on his happiest days, it started here. It was the scar left by this first devastating loss. It was the permanent ache of a missing piece. This experience didn't make him cynical or bitter. For some people, that kind of pain closes them off, makes them build walls so high that no one can ever get close enough to hurt them again. But for him, it seemed to have the opposite effect. It made him more gentle, more compassionate. It made him understand that everyone you meet is fighting their own secret battle, carrying their own hidden scars. Maybe that's why he's so kind to strangers. Maybe that's why he treats every single person with respect, from the director to the caterer to the fan on the street. Because he knows, in the deepest part of his soul, that life is short and painful, and the only thing that truly matters is love. The only thing that can make any of it bearable is human connection. This was the first crack in his foundation, a deep and painful one. But as he would soon discover, life was not done testing him. The universe had even greater tragedies in store, tragedies that would push him to the very brink of despair and force him to find a way to not just survive, but to truly live. After the storm of losing his friend, a quiet calm began to settle into his life. The world kept spinning, and he was swept along in its current, becoming bigger and more famous than he ever could have imagined. But in the middle of all that noise and chaos, he found something real. He found a person who saw past the movie star, past the action hero, and saw the gentle, quiet man underneath. She was an artist, a creative soul with a kind heart and a brilliant mind, and with her, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in a long time. Their connection was deep and immediate, a safe harbor in the often turbulent sea of his life. For the first time in a while, it felt like he could breathe. Their love story wasn't one for the tabloids. It was private and sacred, built on late-night conversations, shared dreams, and a comfortable silence that only true soulmates can understand. And then their world got even brighter. They were going to have a baby, a daughter. The news was a beacon of light, a promise of a new chapter, a future filled with the patter of tiny feet and the sound of a child's laughter. He was going to be a father. This was a role more important than any he had ever played on screen. He and his partner began to prepare, painting a nursery, picking out names, and dreaming about the life they would build as a family. It was a time of pure, unadulterated joy. After so much darkness, it felt like the universe was finally giving him a gift, a chance to build the happy, stable life he had always secretly craved, but life has a way of reminding you that it is not a fairy tale. The joy they felt was immense, which made the pain that followed even more crushing. The day their daughter was supposed to be born was the day their dream died. She was stillborn. In an instant, the future they had so carefully planned and so desperately hoped for vanished. The silence in the delivery room must have been deafening, a heavy, suffocating blanket where the sound of a first cry was supposed to be. It's a unique kind of hell to hold the child you created, the child you loved with every fiber of your being, and to know you will never hear her voice or see her eyes open to the world. It's a grief for a lifetime of moments that will never happen. The first steps, the first words, the first day of school all gone. In the face of this unimaginable loss, they had each other. Their shared sorrow became a strange, painful kind of glue. They held each other up when the other felt like falling. They cried together, they raged at the universe together, and they tried to navigate a world that felt gray and meaningless without their daughter in it. Their love was tested in the fire, and for a while it seemed like it might be strong enough to survive. They were two wounded souls, leaning on each other for support, trying to find a way to walk through a world that no longer made sense. They were bonded by a pain so deep that no one else could truly understand it. Just when they thought they had endured the worst, that life couldn't possibly be any crueler, it was. Less than 2 years later, his partner was gone. She was driving home from a party at the musician's house, a party she had left early, feeling unwell. Her car hit a row of parked cars. The phone call he received must have felt like a punch to the gut, a sick, twisted joke that couldn't possibly be true. But it was. The one person who understood his specific, unique pain, the one person who was walking the same dark path as him, was suddenly gone. In the span of 18 months, he had lost his daughter and the love of his life. He was not just grieving. He was standing alone in the complete and total wreckage of his world. It's almost impossible to comprehend the weight of that kind of sorrow. How does a person even begin to process that? The world saw him as the star of the Matrix, the man who could dodge bullets and bend reality. But in reality, he was a man who was broken, a man who had lost everything that truly mattered to him. He was completely, utterly alone in his grief. The two people who were his future were gone, and he was left with only the past. He had to face the world, to do interviews and attend premieres for one of the biggest movies of all time, while his personal life had been completely annihilated. He must have felt like a ghost, just going through the motions. His body on a red carpet while his soul was somewhere else entirely. Lost in a fog of pain, this period of his life is a testament to the incredible strength of the human spirit, but also to its incredible fragility. He didn't retreat from the world in anger or bitterness. He didn't lash out or curse his fate. Instead, he did what he always does. He endured. He carried his pain with a quiet dignity that was both heartbreaking and inspiring. He became even more private, even more guarded, but those who knew him said that the experience deepened him in a way that was both beautiful and tragic. It was as if he had been to the darkest depths of human suffering and had seen something there, something that changed him forever. This was the ultimate test. This was the moment that would define him. Would he let this unimaginable pain destroy him, or would he find a way to carry it, to transform it into something else? The answer to that question would not only shape the rest of his life, but would also become the silent, powerful lesson he would one day share with the world. Not through words, but through the simple, kind way he chose to live. After losing the two people who formed his entire world, a profound silence must have fallen over his life. It wasn't the peaceful kind of silence, but the heavy, suffocating kind that follows a massive explosion. The world saw him continue his work, saw him become one of the biggest movie stars on the planet, but they couldn't see the ghost walking beside him. They couldn't see the man who would go back to an empty home, a home that was supposed to be filled with laughter and the sounds of a family. In the years that followed, he didn't disappear. He didn't lash out at the world or retreat into a life of bitter seclusion. Instead, he did something much harder. He began the long, painful, and invisible journey of learning to live with an unimaginable weight. Initially, the only way he knew how to survive was to keep moving. He threw himself into his work with a ferocious intensity. On screen, he was the one-man army, the savior of humanity, the unstoppable force. He became John Wick, a man driven by a grief so powerful it becomes a weapon. It's easy to watch these movies and see them as simple action flicks. But when you know the story, you see something more. You see a man channeling the chaos inside him into a controlled physical release. Every punch thrown, every leap made, every battle fought on screen was a metaphor for the war raging within his own soul. It was a way to exhaust his body so his mind could find a few moments of quiet. It was a way to feel something other than the crushing emptiness of grief. The focus required for those complex stunts, The discipline to transform his body, it was all a form of meditation, a way to quiet the noise of the what-ifs and if-onlys that must have haunted his every waking moment. But you can only run for so long. You can only fight your own shadow for so long before you have to turn and face it. This was the crucible. A crucible is a vessel used to melt things down at incredibly high temperatures, burning away all the impurities until only the purest element remains. That's what grief did to him. It was a fire that burned away the superficial parts of life, the parts that don't really matter. It burned away the ego, the vanity, the illusion of control. In that intense heat, he was broken down to his most fundamental self. And in that broken, molten state, he began to forge a new understanding of life. Not from books or teachers, but from the raw, painful experience of loss itself. He began to understand a fundamental truth that most of us spend our lives avoiding. Grief is not something to be gotten over. It's not an illness to be cured. It's not an enemy to be defeated. It's a wound, and like a deep physical wound, it doesn't just disappear. It heals, but it leaves a scar. And that scar becomes a part of you. He learned that the goal wasn't to erase the pain, but to integrate it, to make space for it, to carry it not as a crushing burden, but as a part of his history, a testament to the love he had lost. The pain wasn't a sign that he was broken. It was the ultimate proof that he had loved and loved deeply. The sorrow he felt for his daughter and his partner was the echo of the love he still held for them. To let go of the pain would have been to let go of the love, and that was a price he was not willing to pay. This profound shift in thinking changed everything. When you see pain not as a punishment, but as a consequence of love, it transforms your relationship with the world. It opens your heart. He had been to the darkest depths of human suffering, and because of that, he could now recognize the light and shadow in everyone he met. He understood that the person serving him coffee, the driver stuck in traffic next to him, the fan asking for a picture, every single one of them was carrying their own hidden wounds. Everyone had their own private tragedy, their own quiet sorrow. He no longer saw people as obstacles or props in the movie of his life. He saw them as fellow travelers, each navigating their own difficult journey, and this is where the quiet icon we see today was truly born. His kindness wasn't a sudden personality change. It was the natural, organic result of this internal transformation. When he gives up his seat on the subway, it's not just a nice gesture. It's an act of profound empathy, a recognition of a shared humanity. When he takes pay cuts to help other actors, it's not just a business decision. It's a practical application of his belief that we are all in this together, that one person's success shouldn't come at the expense of another's. When he hovers his hands respectfully near a fan's back for a photo, it's more than just avoiding contact. It's a deep-seated respect for another person's space and autonomy, something he understands intimately after having his own world so violently shattered. And here is the most important part of this entire chapter. It was a choice. In the face of unimaginable darkness, he was presented with a choice. He could have let the tragedies harden him, turning him into a cynical, bitter man who trusted no one and saw the world as a hostile place. No one would have blamed him. It would have been an understandable, almost expected, reaction. But he made a different choice. He chose to let the pain break him open instead of breaking him apart. He chose to allow his suffering to deepen his capacity for compassion. He chose to find meaning not in what he had lost, but in how he chose to live in the face of that loss. In the absolute depths of despair, he chose love. He chose kindness. He chose grace. It was a quiet, personal, revolutionary choice. And it's the very reason his story doesn't just leave us feeling sad for him, but deeply inspired by him. So when you see one of those videos of him pop up on your feed, the one where he's sitting on the floor of a subway train, sharing his snacks with a stranger, or the one where he stops his car to help someone who's broken down, you're not just seeing a random act of kindness from a celebrity. You're seeing a lesson lived out loud. You are witnessing the end result of a long, painful journey through darkness. Every gentle gesture, every moment of grace is a deliberate choice, a conscious decision to be a source of light in a world that he knows can be incredibly dark. The kindness isn't the point of the story. It's the evidence of the story's truth. Think about the things he does that have no PR value. The things we only hear about years later from crew members or co-workers. The private cancer foundation he started without ever attaching his famous name to it. He did it quietly, without press releases or galas. Why? Because for him, it wasn't about being seen as a philanthropist. It was a personal, private response to suffering. He had stared into the abyss of loss, and he decided to use his resources to pull others back from the edge, even if no one ever knew it was him. It was a direct conversation with his own pain, a way of honoring the people he lost by trying to ease the pain of others. Then there are the stories from his movie sets. The one where he bought every single member of the stunt team on The Matrix a brand new Harley-Davidson motorcycle. These are the people who do the most dangerous work, the ones who make the hero look good but rarely get the credit. Most stars might sign a poster or say thanks. But he saw them. He saw their risk, their hard work, their dedication. And in a moment of pure, unadulterated gratitude, he gave them a gift that was both cool and deeply personal. He understands that a film set, like life, is a team effort. He's not the star. He's a part of the team. This belief that we are all in this together is the bedrock of his entire philosophy, and this philosophy extends to the smallest, most fleeting moments. The way he interacts with fans. He doesn't just tolerate them. He seems to genuinely enjoy the connection. He takes his time, listens to their stories, and makes them feel seen. That signature move of his, where he hovers his hands near a woman's back for a photo without ever touching her, speaks volumes. It's a small act, but it's filled with a profound respect for another person's space and autonomy. In a world where boundaries are often ignored, especially by the powerful, this simple gesture is a radical act of decency. It says, I see you as a whole person, not just an object in my photo. So what is the lesson he shares, the one that was forged in the crucible of his tragedies? It's not written in a self-help book or delivered in a TED Talk, it's whispered through his actions. The lesson is this: pain is an inevitable part of life. It will find you. It will break your heart. But suffering is optional. Suffering is what happens when we let that pain close us off, when we let it turn us bitter, when we allow it to convince us that we are alone. He learned that the only antidote to the pain of existence is the connection of humanity. He could have built a fortress around his heart. After losing his brother, his daughter, and the love of his life, no one would have blamed him for becoming a recluse, for pushing the world away. It would have been a rational response to an irrational amount of pain. But he made a different choice. He chose to let his tragedies break him open instead of breaking him apart. Think of it like a clay pot. If you drop it, it shatters. But if you put it back together, the cracks are still there. They are a part of its history. And if you put a candle inside, the light shines out through the cracks. His tragedies shattered him, but when he put himself back together, he didn't hide the cracks. He allowed his inner light to shine through them. That is why his story moves us to tears. It's not because we feel sorry for him. It's because we are in awe of him. We are moved by the immense grace with which he carries his burden. We are inspired by the choice he made in the face of unimaginable darkness. In a world that often celebrates power, wealth, and fame, he shows us that true strength is found in vulnerability, in kindness, and in compassion. He teaches us that our wounds do not have to be our weakness. They can be the source of our greatest power. They can be the very thing that connects us to each other. The man on the park bench, looking sad and alone, and the man on the subway, giving up his seat, are the exact same person. You cannot have one without the other. The sadness is the acknowledgement of the pain he has endured. The kindness is his response to it. They are two sides of the same coin, a currency he uses to pay his way through the world. He doesn't pretend to be happy all the time. He doesn't put on a fake smile. He is authentic. He allows himself to feel the sorrow, and in doing so, he creates space for others to feel their own sorrow, too. His legacy will not be the billions his movies have made or the iconic characters he has brought to life. His legacy will be the quiet, powerful lesson he shares by simply living his life. It's a lesson that says it's okay to be broken. It's okay to be sad. But it's not okay to let that sadness make you cruel. It's a reminder that every single person we meet is fighting a hard battle, and that a little bit of kindness can go a long way. He transformed his deepest wounds into sources of profound compassion, proving that even after the darkest of nights, a person can choose to be a source of light for others. It is a lesson not in how to avoid pain, but in how to live a life of meaning in spite of it, a lesson that, when truly understood, will indeed move you to tears.